Well, good morning, everybody. We are in the parking lot waiting for Gettysburg's visitor center to open, and thought we would just pop in real quick and say good morning.
Yeah, been looking forward to doing this for a long time.
Yeah, we tried doing this back in 97, and it was basically just a drive-through back then for us because we couldn't, unfortunately, find a place to stay. It was May. So it was a little bit more busy than it is right now. We're about the fourth car in the parking lot, so we're about 15 minutes before the visitor center opens, but the park's been open since sunrise.
Yep, and it closes at sunset.
So yeah, we just thought we would pop in and say good morning and let the adventure begin.
Yeah.
All right. It's got like little cannonballs and stuff in it, yeah. This must be a theater, huh? Uh-oh. No food or drinks. You can't take your coffee in.
Maybe it'll be set up.
Maybe, yeah.
Gettysburg battlefield. Right now we're at the museum. We just watched the film on Gettysburg, and we have a thing called here, it's called cyclorama. It's a 360-degree painting which was painted back in the late 1800s after the battlefield, and it's hard to describe, but highly recommend it. At first I was kind of, I don't know if I want to do that. But I would highly recommend doing the film, the cyclorama, and then here in a little bit we're going to go on a tour of the battlefields versus driving it. And as you can see, we're sitting here with our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln.
Now known as United States Route 30, the Lincoln Highway. If you look over there to your right in front above the corn, you may have just seen a couple of cars go by. The Union horse soldiers are camped on either side of that road, and they're camped in low ground because there's a stream that runs under the road. They can fill their canteens the next day with water. It was fired at 7:30 a.m. on the morning of July 1st, about 3 miles out the road to your left. At 4,000 Confederates coming at us from the left. The closest Union foot soldiers, 10,000 of them, were camped 6 miles behind you to the south. And it's going to take them 3 hours to march the 6 miles to get here. So the Union horse soldiers are holding off the Confederates, 4,000 of them, the 2,800 horse soldiers, for 3 hours until help can arrive. Help arrives about 10:30. Never attended by the men who sculpted these monuments in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Reynolds was done around 1899. But simply by coincidence, if there's a base or a pedestal under the horse, that rule I just shared with you will work. The more horse's hooves that touch the ground, the better for the general. Can you guys see that the right front and left rear horse's hooves are off the ground? Reynolds is the highest ranking officer killed in battle. And they ran the battlefield till 1933 when the Park Service took over. The War Department also put these brigade markers here. This is about 1,500 men, iron tablets supported by stone bases. But the Peace Light Memorial was funded by money from 7 states. And all 7 states had soldiers that fought the battle. New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, joined by 2 former Confederate states, Tennessee and Virginia. You'll notice the monument's made of 2 different types of stone. The gray horizontal base is Maine granite. The light-colored vertical shaft is Alabama limestone. Notice the flame burning at the top. At the base of the shaft are 2 ladies embracing. They represent the 2 sides of our country, having come back together again. And to the lower left of the lady is our national emblem. Command a division of less than 1/10 that number, 2,800 men. So the highest ranking officers get the equestrian monuments. Guys, I would say one of the biggest reasons we're such a well-marked battlefield is that almost every one of the basic fighting units that fought here on the northern side, we call them regiments. Almost every one of them has a regimental marker on this field. And they were placed here by the men who fought here about 134 years ago, 25 years after the battle. Like this bronze monument with the stacked rifles, 56 Pennsylvania. They're credited with firing the first shots of the battle as a unit, a whole group, from one location.
Towers like these were erected for military people to study the battlefields for training and for battle preparedness purposes.
Makes his headquarters in this stone house on the left, the home of the widow Mary Thompson. This had a motel behind it, a restaurant next to it about 7 years ago. And the American Battlefield Trust bought it, restored it to its wartime appearance. You can park over here. You can see there's an interpretive trail. You can walk around and read about it. The Confederates built this wall right here on the night of the 1st for defense. The green cannon up ahead of us on the right represents the Union Army making their last stand along the ridge here. So the chapel was not here. That was built in the 1940s. The next building, however, most certainly was here. It's the oldest building in the seminary, 1832. This is where the students lived and had their classes. This is the 2nd largest hospital structure in the Eastern Theater of the Civil War. 600 wounded men from both armies were kept in this building at its peak. And then 150 years to the day after the fighting, on July 1st, 2013, that whole building opened as a museum. Guys should go through the whole building today. It's great. Got a lot of good stuff. Valentine Hall was not here. That dates to the 1920s. The final building that was here was the President's House on your left, the Schmucker House. Black cannon below us on the right. Well, that's pointed over towards Cemetery Hill, and that's a Confederate gun, and it represents the Confederates now occupying this ridge on day 2 and 3. And they fought right here behind this stone wall, dismounted, facing to your right. But North Carolinians came from our right, out of the trees. And this is part of the outer surrounding Confederate line. It's about 6 miles long. In April of 2009, this orchard was planted on either side of us. An orchard that would have been here during the battle, but had been missing. until 2009. Are you all familiar with Pickett's charge? It's the big climax of the Battle of Gettysburg, guys. It's on the third day, and it's a classic example of a mass Napoleonic infantry assault. This is what Robert E. Lee studied at West Point, where he graduated second in his class 1829, about 3 decades before. Mass a lot of troops together and just simply overwhelm your enemy. Well, right now, we're on the left edge of where that assault began at 3 p.m. on July 3rd. The 13,000 to 15,000 men that make this on the afternoon of the 3rd stretch down this ridge as we head south. The guys, they're moving across from front right to left. They're trying to break through the Union center on that ridge over there nearly a mile away. Now, the visitor center's on the other side of that ridge, and it took the Confederates about 20 minutes to cover the nearly mile distance. 1 hour after they left this ridge at 3 p.m., half of them returned back here at 4 o'clock. Half of them. Many of the ones that returned are now carrying Yankee lead with them when they return. You know what I mean by that? That's right. They carried a 1-ounce lead bullet back with them. They were wounded, over 50% casualties. Guys, here on the right is a distinctive monument for a couple reasons. It's the newest monument in the battlefield, the 11th Mississippi Regiment, put here in 2000, and it's one of only 4 Confederate regimental markers at Gettysburg. You remember I said every Union unit, regiment has a regimental marker, about 300? Confederates have 4. Maintain the monument down in North Carolina, plus those 6,000 acres of national military park that surround it. North Carolina turned the land over that you're standing on now. You'll see the outline of the state of Tennessee at the very base. Tennessee had a limited number of troops here, about 3 regiments. But the state that had the most Confederate soldiers here is Virginia. And Virginia predates North Carolina in terms of a monument by 12 years. It was on June 6, 1917, that the Virginia Memorial was dedicated. That's just up on top of the hill up here on the left side of the road. You will see Robert E. Lee atop his horse Traveler, and the park has no plans to take it down. The Virginia Memorial at Gettysburg serves several historical purposes. 1, it marks the dead center of where Pickett's charge began. 2, it's where Robert E. Lee had his command post. This is where he watched Pickett's charge from. And 3, this is where Lee went out to greet the survivors of the attack and said to them as they came back, all of this has been my fault, meaning the failure of the attack. I thought my men were invincible. You must do all you can. What's going on now, guys, is they're working on the bronze figures that were done by Tiffany of New York. The stone was here in 1913 at the second 25-year reunion in 1913, 50 years after the battle. The first time Confederate veterans had been invited back. 50,000 surviving Civil War veterans, average age late 60s, early 70s. Well, apparently, over time, these figures have turned very dark. They were a much brighter gold-type color, and that's what they're working on. You can see the guy on the left, they've already taken, I guess, the primer off. The guy on the left loading the rifle is a professional man. The guy behind him with the rifle and the hat is a mechanic, and the guy with the pistol is an artist. Up on horseback in front of the flag, on the horse, is a boy. To the right of him swinging the rifle is a businessman. And then second from the right with the floppy hat and the rifle is a farmer, and on the far right with the bugle is a youth. So the stone base was here in 1913, and then 4 years later in 1917, the bronze figures were added. 1913, first time they invited Confederates back for a reunion. And the very first Confederate State Memorial is under construction. That is a sign that this country has finally started to come together and heal after the Civil War. That's important. Because in 1917, when they completed it with the bronze figures, we went off to get involved in the war to end all wars. So it's kind of important that our country is united before we go off to fight World War I. Function of combat warfare. Louisiana, 1971, Don DeLue. You know, guys, this road we're on right now was not here. Anything called an avenue was built by the War Department over 100 years ago. But this road we're getting ready to cross was here. And there's 15,000 Confederates that have been moving behind the trees on our right. Well, this is where they're going to come out of the tree line at 3 p.m. on the second day of the battle, July 2nd. The object? Seize the high ground 600 yards to your left at the peach orchard. You can see the rows of peach trees behind the fence. The ground dominates the surrounding terrain, and the Confederates plan to put cannons there. They would attack the Union line, which ran along the tree line that you see above and beyond the peach orchard. They would attack that Union line and roll it up right to left. But their plan was foiled when a Union general disobeyed orders and moved 10,000 men from that distant tree line right out to the peach orchard before the Confederates could take it. Southerners would have to head down this ridge another mile, further thinning out their already outnumbered line and delaying their attack until 4:30, 3 hours after daylight. The Snyder Farm here is one of the few buildings on the battlefield that's not currently occupied, and all I can say is it must have something to do with the plumbing. Yeah, you've got your historic outhouse right there, guys. Stone farmhouse, the Rose Farm, the White Dome, Pennsylvania Memorial. That was supposed to be the end of the Union line. The Confederates thought they would seize the peach orchard up here at the end of the road on the right side. But now inside that red brick triangle are two diamond-shaped pinholes. They're right next to each other. Look to the lower left of the diamond on the right, in the lower part of the red brick. Do you see the only cannonball hole that I know of in a battle in Gettysburg? In a building in Gettysburg, excuse me. 10-pound cannonball made the hole. The family found it inside the barn. They presented it to the Park Service, and the Park Service displays currently the cannonball that made that hole in the second day's exhibit at the museum in the National Park Service District. There it is, right there in front of you guys. The Pennsylvania Memorial is 110 feet tall. The goddess of victory, bronze, is holding her sword aloft. The tip of her sword is 110 feet above the ground. That's what makes it the largest monument in Gettysburg.
Okay, so here's what he's talking about is they'd scratched out some names. Evidently they must not have participated well or did something wrong to get their names scratched out.
Cowardly or hit, yeah.
Quite a few of them on this panel. We haven't seen any in the, oh, this one's got a couple too. I walked right past those, didn't notice those. Who would think you could get your name scratched off of a monument?
Well, it's kind of like taking credit for something you weren't a part of or that you did.
Yeah.
It'd be its way of shaming them. They won't know. They're not going to get credit for being here. Even though they were here, they probably did. I don't know. Cowardly or
yeah, I don't know. Just plumb scratched him right off. Oh my goodness. It's like a stairway. Here's the back of Lincoln's head. I don't know whose head that is. Mm-hmm.
Like that, is that there?
That's the front of the monument looking down. We are standing right above this Abe. I don't know if you can see him or not, but we're standing right above where Abe is. There's the truck right there. It's pretty impressive. Didn't realize how big it was. Everything you see within the tree lines, let's say, is just part of the battlefield. Even inside the tree lines in some cases, but for what you can see, it's all battlefield. Mm-hmm.
Like that, is that there? Come across all this open ground, it's just been nuts.
Alright, starting to rain, unfortunately. The sky looks pretty, but behind us, not so pretty. So each one of these cement markers marks the graves or burial locations for certain groups of individuals who fought during the Battle of Gettysburg. Like the one that is on the other section where we showed the names and everything listed. That's what these are here. It's the same thing, just a big circle it looks like. And everybody leaves pennies. Okay, so here's New Hampshire, so it must be for each state that fought. And it just kind of goes in a giant circle around the monument back there. And there's Rhode Island, Delaware coming up. That's the New York monument back there.
So here in the cemetery at Gettysburg, they still have cannons and monuments for the regiments, everybody that fought here. So my assumption, it wasn't covered in our tour, that this is still part of the battlefield, but this is where they chose to put the cemetery for all those that had fallen. Alright, that concludes our day at Gettysburg. We've spent about 6 hours going through the battlefield, the visitor center. We did a tour, we did a couple of things in the visitor center itself. Wendy will put that in the video. I do recommend spending the money that it costs to go through the film and everything there, and then go through the visitor, or take the tour. Right now we're on our own tour and going through a couple of highlighted spots that we liked, and then there's spots on the tour that the bus could not go. So I recommend doing both. With the bus tour, you get somebody giving you the history, and it's just eye-opening. It's just awe-inspiring. That's kind of how I can wrap that up. This is a very awe-inspiring place to be. It's hallowed grounds. Everything behind us right now is hallowed grounds. Somebody lost their life for in the defense of what they thought was right. So that's kind of my point on the day.
No, I really appreciated all of it. There wasn't a part that I didn't like. I enjoyed it all. It was very solemn and a somber feeling, just to know, like John said, how many people have lost their lives for what they believed in. Regardless of the side that they were on, they still lost their lives, and or were injured and that. But we're standing at top of the Pennsylvania monument, and it's the largest in the park, which is, you know, it makes sense that it would be, considering it's in Pennsylvania.
That, and it was the most people fighting on the side of the Union. Just to point something out real quick, the far, hopefully you can see this, the far tree line out there is basically where the South started, and then right behind us a little bit is where the Union side set up. But it's just huge. You have to see this for yourself and experience it yourself to get the grasp of it all.